Yeah.
I mean, those are the easy topics to cover, man. The biggest thing of the week and the biggest thing of the year, maybe.
Right. Maybe. Yeah.
Kendrick, Kendrick Drake, man. Like it's been a wild year, but Kendrick Drake is we in it. We deep in it. We talked about it last time, but since we've talked about, there've literally been five new diss records. Kendrick dropped Euphoria, his reply
Hmm.
to Drake, his original reply to Drake, and then a couple of days later he dropped 616 in LA,
Mm.
which was again just a quick clap back. Um, and then Drake finally came Friday night. He came with Family Matters, which was was the best record that had come out of all this. I think everybody kind of agrees, like not necessarily
Hmm.
best diss record, but best like music record. Like because at the end of
It's
the day,
Drake
they're
though.
still making hits, right? So like that was the biggest hit at the time. But since then, Kendrick's come out with two more joints. So Meet the Grams dropped literally like 20 minutes after Drake dropped, which that kind of took all the hype away from Drake because I've never seen somebody drop 20 minutes after this record dropped. Like now we playing a different type of game.
Right. He's not
Um
playing.
he's not playing. Clearly it was recorded already. He doesn't really talk about anything that Drake brought up, but he dropped that 20 minutes later, and then the next day he dropped Not Like Us, which now is probably the best record. It's produced by DJ Mustard. It's got that West Coast. We
It
going
does.
kind of high feet. Like you want to
It got
dance
that
to
bob.
it. You want to
It
dance
got
to
that
it.
bob.
Yeah, it's that Bob. You definitely want to dance to it, and it has changed the dynamic. Because at first Kendrick was on these R&B beats, and it was like I didn't know where we were going, lyrically killing them, right? But like the replay value wasn't necessarily there. But
Right.
this is like a song they're gonna be playing in the club, and that's what might hurt Drake the most. Like you're not gonna be able to go outside. They was already playing Euphoria on TNT during basketball games. Now you're not gonna be able to go outside because they gonna be playing It's Not Like Us. And on the track, he's talking kind of
He's
reckless.
talking. He
He's
yeah,
talking.
he's definitely talking. And honestly, it's the scariest line to me in that song is when he talks about him not being able to make it out of Oakland. That's scary. And that's the reason why I think that J. Cole kind of just bowed out, and I think that now, some people are kind of backtracking, I'm not. I still feel like how J. Cole did it was a sucker move because he did it at his festival, but that's neither here nor there.
Mhm,
Anyway,
mhm.
that's the scariest line in that song because that's some real shit
Yeah,
because the West Coast is really like that. Like like just off of the strength, like they're definitely a very principled coast. Like just off of the strength of West Coast, like
yeah,
Drake
yeah.
really might, be tuna salad.
It's and that's the thing. Like it's gotten. I think before before Meet the Grams dropped, and maybe even before Euphoria dropped, somewhere between Euphoria and 616 in LA, this turned into an actual I hate you beef, right? Like, and that at
Right.
first I think Drake was on some, okay, are we just like are we sparring? Like it's tough to really know what we were doing at that point. I think like that's why Drake didn't really go too hard on his first two disses. Cause it was like, I even like that, the future record. It's like, I just you taking shots, but like we not really going for the juggler. We not hating each other. Like they could have went on tour off those records. Like literally, we're gonna piece it up on stage. But
Right.
it's become ether super ugly. Like we gonna
Hmm.
talk about everything. And in these last few diss records, we got Drake saying that Kendrick has beat his baby mother slash fiance. He talked about the fact that they've been engaged for 9 years and they still not, getting married. Um, so you got that going on. And you got Kendrick talking about Adonis, like Meet the Grams is literally like a letter to Adonis. That's how it starts off. It's like your pops ain't shit. Um,
Disrespectful.
I want you to know that your pop's not shit and he should be better and he was trying to hide you. So it starts with that. Then he talks about a daughter that Drake might have. Who knows if that's real or
Right.
fake,
I've been hearing
right?
about that.
So that there's a lot of talk like that Drake planted some of this stuff and like it's not real. Drake has also come out and
Yeah.
said if anybody could prove that he has a daughter, that he'll quit rap. So like clearly he's doubling down. Like it's not like with Adonis when Pusha T
Right.
track, it was definitely like, okay, yeah, I was hiding my son, to save my son, not y'all, right? Um, but this time he's like, yeah, if you can prove I got a daughter, I'm done, right? Which
Right.
sounds good. There's also now talk of it's so funny because Drake was saying that Rick Ross was on the Ozempic and like the side effects is why Rick Ross did his diss. But now
Mhm.
Kendrick's saying that Drake is taking Ozempic. And BBL Drizzy's been trending, like
BBO Drizzy.
and Metro Boomin put out a record. He put it on social media like, yo, anybody. So the record's called BBL Drizzy. So he put the beat out and he said whoever got the best verse, he'll put it out. So it's a mess.
Damn, they hate his guts.
Yo, yo, it is a mess, right? Like, and don't get me wrong, like Drake, talked his talk on you see so many damn records. I could barely on Family Matters, he talks directly to Metro Boomin. He calls him by
Mm.
his real name, Leland Wayne. And he's like, yeah, that's the reason why Leland's the reason Future's out here acting up, because there's no reason I should be beefing with Future. But all I said, it's a lot of moving parts. I think the biggest question for everyone right now is like, where does this go? And like you said, when you talk about the West Coast, things can get tricky. Obviously, Drake's not necessarily from the East Coast, but I don't know. Toronto, I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing now. Is like this is
He's
getting
from Canada, so he's an outsider anyway.
right,
So what
off
that
rip,
means?
right? Off rip. Which is interesting because that's what kind of Kendrick is talking about on that not like us track, right? Like he's
Mhm.
talking about the fact that Drake he calls Drake a colonizer, right? Like which is weird. It's weird only because Drake. I mean, let's be clear. Drake is black, right? Like I don't think before these last 2 weeks anybody was questioning Drake's
You are
black,
what your daddy is.
right? Like I think that part is obvious. So nobody was really questioning Drake's blackness 2 weeks ago, but all of a
Mhm.
sudden people are questioning that. People are, he has a line where he says Kendrick. So on the Family Matters joint, he's like Kendrick's always rapping like he's trying to free the slaves. That shit is funny. It's funny. I
He's
didn't have a
witty.
problem with
He's
it's
witty.
witty as fuck. But like now I'm on the internet and people like, oh, that's why he not really like us because the fact that he think that line is funny. Like that shit was funny. Y'all didn't laugh when y'all heard that originally? Y'all was tight. He was mad. You was in your bag because he said you trying to rap like you trying to free the slave. Because that's when I was like, ooh, this nigga's
You
wild.
know what I think? I think that so the thing is Kendrick's Not Like Us This, I mean, song for like you said, it's the Cali energy. It's definitely the West Coast energy. That's number one. Number two, it still is a hit
Yeah,
because of the beat, the energy. Number three, so Kendrick reminds me of two people. He reminds me of Nicki and he reminds me of Eminem when it comes to his storytelling. And he gives me an Eminem vibe too because he's kind of just ruthless. Like he's gonna say whatever. Like, and that's how Eminem is when it comes to anybody, especially Mariah Carey. Like he's gonna go that ham. But it's gonna be so poetic, it's gonna be so eloquent. And like this, it kind of just reminds me of what Nicki did when she dropped Bigfoot. Because some people said Bigfoot was trash. But if you are a fan of Nicki Minaj and you understand her different flows and you understand her wittiness, you would appreciate it. Same thing with Not Like Us. You understand the way that he tells stories. So I think like the whole like, oh, you're trying to rap like for slaves and things like that. I seen what Joel Santana had to say about that? We already know Dipset, they fuck with Drake, of course.
Exactly.
So which I was surprised when it comes from when it comes to Jewels, because Jewels is really a storyteller as well. Like he comes from that era of having to be a storyteller and still make the shit catchy and still, you know.
Right.
So I'm actually surprised that he's not a fan of Kendrick's diss, but I think that Nicki is a fan of it quietly on when it comes to the artistry. That's what I think. Like, of course, she's definitely Team Drizzy, but I think when it comes to the artistry and when it comes to the music, because that not like us, he called him a freaky ass hoe. He said,
That's the funny part. So he calls him like 69, 69 God. Like,
"Yeah, you a 6'9" guy, you a freaky ass."
I mean, I'm like, does that is that really a if you Drake, does that help or hurt you? Right? Like that don't really that's what
I
Drake
think
is for the women. He for the ladies. Like that don't hurt him. Like, yeah, I'm outside. So I don't think that hurts him.
No, but I think it depends on how you look at it. Like it's just like it's just I think it just depends on how you look at it. He basically just calling Drake like you a hoe. Like
Yeah.
it's just I think it's just a part of that masculinity and that manhood that they're trying to strip Drake of. It's just that. But yeah, it's just that. It's definitely funny. It's definitely funny for the creed of like K Dot and for like his fans and what his fans look like and like where his fans come from and like what they, it's definitely funny. And it reminds me of the same line that Nikki said about Meg when she was like, Quench, get up in that ass like French. Like like basically Meg, you a hoe. Like anybody could fuck you in the ass. Like you know what I mean? I feel like it's the same. It's equivalent to what Kendrick said about Drake, and that's why I think Nicki would respect it just off of the artistry because he came just as hard as Nicki did. And I think both of those tracks are. I think they're synonymous when it comes to rap beefs. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last kind of point about it's a lot of character assassinations happening. And some of them, like, we gotta figure out how real these are. Cause again, saying that Drake has a daughter, like, that's fun and games, right? You could say he's a terrible, because essentially that whole Meet the Grams track is you are a terrible parent and you don't want to acknowledge your kids because you are a terrible man, right? Which is, that's something to say, but is it true? Right? Like, and I understand that, Drake is not here posting Adonis all day, but he's definitely acknowledged Adonis. Like, let's be real. Like he's posting them, they going to basketball games, they on tour.
Right.
So let's not act like this man's not being a fault. And
Let's not act like niggas ain't deadbeats in the hood. Just regular niggas in the hood.
right,
Probably niggas
right.
probably niggas you smoke with. Let's not act like your mans ain't deadbeats. K dot. Like let's not
Right.
do
And
that.
that's the thing, right?
That's
Because I'm sure K Dot got
let's
some
not do
dudes on the team that's some deadbeats. Yes, K
that.
is with his kids. But again, if we talking about somebody, and that's what Drake was trying to say, like we talking about, somebody not posting their kids. How many times have you seen K Dot with his kids, right? Like, so there's that. But the biggest character in assassination, I think, I mean, it's two. It's the fact that he says that K Dot is beating his woman, which
I can
again,
see
I don't know.
that.
Listen, listen, and that's the thing. So if that track stood the whole weekend by itself, Kenny would have some problems, right? Like if that was the only thing that came out this weekend and like it was just you beat your wife, you ain't marrying this chick after 9 years. Those jabs was gonna hit so hard that Kenny would have had a hard time coming back on Monday. But the fact that Kenny came back 15 minutes later, even though he doesn't mention, like clearly all pre-recorded, doesn't mention anything Drake says, doesn't like clap back
Hmm.
in any of it, but also acknowledging that the only place Drake could have gone is talking about my family, so I'm going to talk about your family. So because of that, nobody's really talking about the fact that K Dot might be a woman beater. You know, again, don't know how real it is, right? But Drake says he hires a crisis management team. So there's more to that. And I think that is a huge character assassination. I think even K Dot's fans have to look at him different if he is in fact a woman beater. Um, so that's a very tricky place we're in. But then we also have Kendrick saying that Drake is into young girls and you know basically almost alleges that Drake is into is running a pedophile ring, which talk about character assassination.
No
Like,
Diddy.
I ain't gonna get
No
into that.
Diddy.
I ain't gonna get into that at all.
Yeah,
But
this.
um, yeah, I don't know if either one of those are provable. Because
Hmm.
those are both of those allegations are past rap, right? Like, and doesn't
Right.
matter how nice you are, if we find out that either one of those two things is true, both those men have problems, right? Like the Ozempic shit is funny. The
Hmm.
um the BBL Drizzy funny. That's not gonna hurt you as a person, right?
Right.
But if you are out here messing with minors, you're out here potentially doing pedophilia rings, if you are abusing women, any of those things,
Hmm.
that's career
Hmm.
suicide. And
Yeah, that is. And then that just makes you think like, what is the motive? Like, K Dot, what's your motive? Like, you really hate this man. All right, cool.
yeah.
And I think for Drake, I think it's one of those things where like it's just like a friendly competition. Like,
Yeah.
I think like that's just like his personality. It's just a friendly competition. Like, all right, cool. And I remember seeing this video of Drake like the one thing about Drake that I do admire is Drake is very diplomatic. And I there was a video I seen of him a few years ago when he was like, none of these guys are friends. Like he was like, none of these guys are friends. Like these guys are like, and I just think that, he works in the business understanding that. And yeah, this hate is it's a little crazy. It's like, damn, y'all really hate this guy. So it would be more issues I feel for Drake if those allegations are true versus K Dot, because respectfully, like I could see K Dot beating his wife's ass. I could see that. Like, I'm not saying that he's done it, but it's not hard for me to believe. Like,
Right,
I
right,
mean, it's really not hard for me to believe that. So, I could see that, but I don't think that would lose him a fan base versus the whole thing, with Drake, if that is true.
right,
Um, about Drake liking younger girls, I feel like all these men like younger girls. It just is what it is. Younger girls also like older men too. So I mean, how young are we talking? That's where it's that's where you crossing that line of crimes of, heinous crimes. That's when you
yeah,
cross that line.
yeah.
So
That's when you
yeah,
get into the a Fed raid, and if this ends with a Fed raid, this is gonna be a year, because
literally. So
I don't know. Like it's again. I think it's who knows. By the time this episode gets seen, there might be another 4 diss tracks. The way they moving, um,
yeah, they
but
moving
hopefully
quick.
they take a couple of days off and we get this episode up. I do think one thing too, Naj, Kendrick spends a lot of time on that last track. It's the party track, but he's talking about how Drake basically like he calls him a colonizer and basically says like he goes and does music with artists just to get into that area and region. Like he talks about him doing music with Future so he could knock in Atlanta, and he won a street cred, so he got with 21 Savage and so on and so forth. I think that's real disingenuous. Like a lot of the people that he mentions Drake doing features with, Kendrick has done features with as well. So I don't know that Mask Off remix with Kendrick. Like you wasn't trying to get into Future's fan base. Like that's so it's a
Right.
weird thing to say. I think that was a little disingenuous, but besides that, it's a great record. Who's
It
winning the
is.
beef right now? I think is the question. People would want to know who we think. Do you
Who do
have
you
somebody
think?
winning so far?
And
Um,
winning at what? That's the question. Winning
right.
at what?
Winning at what? It's a rap beef, so I'm gonna keep it like rap and lyrics and who is, they're really trying to figure out who's the best artist right now. Right this second, I have to say Kendrick. just because he's put out more in these last few days. I think like a lot of this is going to become a numbers game. You know, they were comparing numbers for Tailor Made Freestyle and the first Drake disc. I can't even remember the name right this second. They were comparing numbers for that, but like those weren't put on streaming services first. They were put
Mhm.
on like social media. These last two records have both been put up on YouTube at the same time. So that's what we
Mhm.
really got to compare. Family Matters versus Not Like Us. That's where the numbers is going to really show. I think right now Kendrick's winning. So that doesn't necessarily bode well for Drake because he's supposed to have the bigger fan base. But we're
I
gonna see.
think I think that I think that Kendrick is winning the battle, but I think that Drake is winning the war. And I think what you just said is is a good point when you said like his you would think that Drake would, the numbers would be better because he has a bigger fan base, but I
Mhm,
think that Drake's fan base doesn't care about rap beef.
true.
Like, you get what I'm saying? I think that like Drake's fan base are gonna go see him. They're gonna be at the tour. Like, they're listening to the feel good music. Like his fan base is not checking. His fan base probably don't really even know who Kendrick Lamar is. Like I'm talking about his fan base, not niggas who know of Drake. And because I've never been a fan of Drake. You know what I mean? And I grew up watching Degrassi, but as far as him as an artist, I've never been a fan. So I think like people who are fans of Drake, like they're not into rap beef. So, you know,
I
that's
get
just how I feel.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
Drake is for the women. You know what I'm saying? Like Drake
I
is for
don't
the
think
women.
I don't think that Drake is for the women. You know who I think Drake is for? I think Drake is for the unconditionally happy person. Like, I think that Drake, like, I remember when he dropped the last album, this was like 2022, that album, and I remember people saying like this album is for people with an 800 credit score, with people that, and I just listening to the album, because that was probably one of the first full albums I've listened to of Drake. I could definitely agree. Like
Certified Lover Boy album.
that album is for people who are happy. People who have no care in the world, who are on the rooftops every weekend, people who, they don't live paycheck to paycheck, like paydays come around all the time. They not even worried, you know, that's who his music is for. You know? That's just how I feel
That
at the
life
end of
is
the day.
good. That life is good. You know what I'm
And
saying?
shit, I'm trying to be a Drake fan.
I
What's going
get
on?
that.